Quick note before we start this interview, there's a lot of words in there like Web 3.0 or the Metaverse. So if you're not familiar with any of those, I would check out a recent post that I put on the blog yesterday called Four Things Everybody Should Know About the Metaverse. It's on the homepage or the archive. So yeah, if you're not too familiar, check those out. And then, let's get on to the interview. Welcome back to the show. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Lindsey McInerney, the former global head of technology and innovation at Anheuser-Busch. Lindsey, thank you for being here today. And why don't you begin by explaining a little bit about the Z-Run project?
Yeah, sure. Look, in my role at AB InBev, my job was to bring new and emerging technologies to the business that are really good, really going to shape and change the way a global FMCG brand goes to market. And one of the most seismic things that's happening right now, and I think is going to be mainstay in the next 5 to 10 years, is this shift from Web 2 to Web 3 and from social media to Metaverse. Right. So there's a lot of different moving technologies underneath that. And me and my team, we went down a rabbit hole of blockchain, crypto, NFTs, Metaverse, and started examining all the different ways that they're going to impact the business. For me, my thesis is that Metaverse is the future of sponsorships, of advertising, of experiential marketing, of licensing, and lots of other things, and a tremendous opportunity to bring people together to be entertained in a way that you cannot in reality, because there's no borders, because there's no physics, we don't have gravity, and you can be wildly creative. So started to explore different ways that AB InBev could test waters with their brands in the Metaverse. And, again, going back to the thesis, my thesis is that brands who enter Metaverse and do it well will parallel in Metaverse what they do well in reality. And so in reality, AB InBev are one of the largest sponsors of sport, media, and entertainment. They bring people together to be entertained. And there were really two brands that made a lot of sense to think about, the digital sports, in particular, Z-Run, which is a crypto-based horse racing platform. And that is Budweiser, because in reality, we have stables and horses with Budweiser and Clydesdales in the US. And then Stella Artois, which is the sponsor of a premium horse race in reality in the United Kingdom. And so, again, looked at those two brands and thought, how can we replicate what we do well in reality? And Z-Run made a perfect partnership as a premium sporting platform in the Metaverse, but also premium horse racing platform for Stella Artois. And that's where we started from, was, making sure that those checks and balances were in place, and that showing up with Z-Run would be a place consumers expected us to be.
So you guys auctioned off 10 bundles of premium skins for the horses, right?
Yeah, it was actually 50 bundles. And in those bundles, there were 3 assets in each bundle. One was a Genesis horse for the Z-Run platform. The other was a unique Stella skin, of which there were 5 varieties. Then there was also a unique commemorative art piece. Each of these were their own NFTs. And we auctioned those off over 5 days.
Great. So I hear a lot about, companies trying to make their products and services compatible with the metaverse. But what does that actually mean? Like, what operations of the business benefit from this migration? Because right now I really see, brand awareness and marketing is the top sort of use case of the metaverse for businesses. But is there anything else? Selling products, or maybe you mentioned experiential?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's the future of all things that we've done really well digitally for, the past 2 decades. So if you think about, those areas, it's experiential. You can create wild experiences for people the same way that brands do in reality, right? Brands bring people together to stadiums. They bring them together to bars and pubs and restaurants. They bring them together to fashion shows, art galleries, and all of these really rich, real experiences, sporting events. You can do all of that in the metaverse and more. So, I think that's really interesting. But it's also the future of advertising, right? Where more people start to go and where there are eyeballs are places that marketers like to be. There's opportunities, certainly there. But there's also the ability to sell both digital and physical objects. And so if you think about things like fashion, you've already seen some great examples from folks like Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, and the like, selling digital versions of their products in reality. And why would people want to buy those? Well, when more and more people are spending time online, they care about how they show up. And the next generation is a great example of that, where they're, harassing and hounding their parents for Robux and other, currencies for worlds they're participating in to buy skins in games. This is not a new thing that people would want to spend, customize the avatar or the, thing that they're spending time with online. But now with things like NFTs and these worlds expanding, there's a greater opportunity for brands and to go direct to avatar. And allow consumers to explore identity in a way they've never been able to in these digital, with their digital selves, which is interesting. There's this opportunity to enhance a lot of our experiences by making them three-dimensional. And so I think about films and books like Ready Player One, and the book in my mind was much better than the film. I love the book, where, the main character is able to go to a shopping mall digitally, and it's three-dimensional. It's not scrolling a website. It's not clicking add to cart. It's being able to go into a shop and pick up an object and try it on digitally. If your avatar replicates your physical body digitally, you can try something on and decide whether it's going to work for you or not before you buy it, which is interesting to brands because they waste a lot of money on returns and whatnot. So, it gets interesting. But also being able to buy that item digitally and have it show up at your door physically. And so, even for consumer brands, imagine being able to walk into a wine shop on, in a three-dimensional world. And rather than just go to a 2D website and scroll through and, pick a bottle, you can go in and actually talk to somebody there who's employed to work there, and they're being paid to work there as as an avatar that greets you. And you get to actually talk to them, what do you like? Do you want to have a full body? Do you like something more mild? What's your selection? What's your choice? What's your flavor? They can help to recommend it. And of course, the next day it can show up in your house in reality. And you can be enjoying your bottle of wine that you picked out on a Friday night. So absolute infinite possibilities, I think, to entertain, delight, make impressions, but also to sell both physical and digital goods.
It's funny, that answer actually almost answers my next question, which was about something I read in an article on Sifted, where they mentioned that the individual actually has more bargaining power in the metaverse as opposed to reality. Because in reality, if you're a drinks manufacturer, you can just go to a venue like a soccer stadium and make a humongous contract. But in the metaverse, you actually, as a company, you have to build a relationship with individuals. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how companies might tackle that, building that relationship. I saw an article from Kathy Hackle, another leading thinker in this space, and she mentioned chatbot avatars, which was pretty interesting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I am a big proponent for the open metaverse, right? So I think some of the failure points of Web 2 has been the giant platforms that have emerged that don't give consumers many choices to control their data, to be marketed to these sorts of things. And so my hope and aspiration certainly is that we have an open metaverse that's not being built by one individual, but by many. And that as consumers and as collectors and people, we are able to shape what that looks like, big time. That's certainly my dream and my hope. I think right now the space definitely is owned by the individual and not the corporate, which is a really interesting and attractive thing. It's a great time to be there as an individual. And brands going in, actually, this is one of their greatest challenges, is going in and acting authentic within that community and not being offensive. Because it's not really a space that is open to being sold to in the traditional way you would in Web 2. It's not go in and broadcast on Discord the way you do on Twitter, for example. And there's a lot of more real opportunities to engage with people.
Any market gaps that you see that are unfilled right now?
Everything, because it's so nascent and new, right? I think, where we are right now, is really similar to where we were when the Apple App Store was first developed, right? Where all people could think of was making an app that was a trombone sound or making an app that was a trumpet sound. Like, ridiculous now when we think back. Like, I remember, getting an egg timer on my phone and being like, wow, I have an egg timer app. This is so cool. And genuinely, that's like, our brains didn't have the elasticity at that point to think about how much bigger this could all be. And that's kind of where we are right now, where I have a feeling we're going to look at some of the stuff we're doing right now in 5 years and go, oh my God, we were fools. What were we thinking? There was way bigger opportunity that we couldn't imagine at that point in time, but became obvious over time that the early builders, the people who are building the egg timer app now for Metaverse, like, they'll be well positioned to build the billion-dollar applications that, of the Apple, the App Store, those sorts of things. But it's impossible to say where this goes, except for that it's absolutely the future, and there is infinite use cases and infinite industry to be explored. I don't think we've seen a killer music application yet, or what does the future of music look like in these worlds? Like, we've seen some great attempts and some great executions, but is that where it ends? Nah, I don't think so. I think it's going to get more interesting than that. Same with film and TV, sport. If you think about where video games were 15, 20 years ago and where they are now and where they could go in three-dimensional worlds and universes, like, oh my God, we got something else coming there for sure. So, I think, I am infinitely excited about the future and the impact that this space and these technologies can have on every vertical and every industry.
Yeah. And it definitely is like a huge industry. I mean, I learned recently that the gaming industry is actually bigger than the music and the film industry combined in terms of users and annual revenue. And you see a bunch of big players like Netflix also like dabbling in making VR games like Eden Unearthed, things like that. So it's definitely definitely huge. So my next question was, if you actually see interoperability being a problem as we move into this metaverse age, because we don't want an Apple metaverse, a Facebook digital ecosystem, and then Netflix doing their own thing, and it would benefit the end user if we could actually access all worlds and mix and kind of mix content from all these different companies. And how do you think that we can actually tackle that moving forward?
Yeah, totally. Look, I think if we build that way, which sounds very much like how we built in Web 2, we've failed already, right? I'm a huge advocate for interoperability, and I think that companies should be as well, because what it looks like right now is, imagine like shopping at H&M, and before you could go into Zara, you had to take all your clothes off in the street and put on a Zara outfit and walk in there, right? Like, it's ridiculous. That's absurd. You can wear H&M and walk into Zara and still buy bucket loads of clothes, but just have a much more convenient experience as you enter that shop. And so, I think we enhance each other's, and the world's like that too, right? Where visiting cultures, visiting countries, like, it enhances things and it makes things more interesting. And you don't have to show up, entirely in the culture of the place you're visiting. It's actually a value add to show up as yourself and bring that part of you to these new places. So, I think it's important that we're building to be interoperable. We don't know what those standards are going to look like exactly yet, but I hope we find them. We will find them. And you've got, some really intelligent people working on that problem, and challenges that surround it, like, identity and how you carry that with you as well. So yeah, a big proponent for interoperability in open worlds, no question.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely going to be an important problem to keep an eye on, moving forward. And who knows, maybe actually blockchain is going to help us with that, making sure that it's a decentralized, sort of everybody owns part of it kind of world. So my next question is from Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, and it's, what's one fundamental truth that most people disagree with you on?
Controversial thought for you. Number one, I believe that there's one metaverse, right? So a lot of people refer to the Roblox metaverse, the Fortnite metaverse, the Decentral. No, there's one metaverse, like there's one internet, and then there's different universes for me within the metaverse. So that's one for sure. That's a hill I'm on for sure. Another one is that I don't believe that the metaverse needs to be exclusively AR and VR. I think the metaverse needs to be mobile. It needs to be on desktop. It will be augmented. I think we'll all end up with, you're a glasses wearer, I'm a glasses wearer. At some point, we'll own a pair of glasses that maybe Apple makes that we can't live without, the same way we don't want to live without our iPhones, or whatever else that make, the world better. But I don't believe that we need to be completely 100% fully immersed in order to be engaging in and experiencing the metaverse. And I think that's important for a lot of reasons, actually, including accessibility, which is big. And I guess, some interesting things that I've been thinking about, or that I think people are talking about a lot right now, is that in science fiction, metaverse is often an answer to some sort of dystopian reality that people are living in. And I think that it's really careful that as early citizens of metaverse and as early builders, we're not only working to ensure that the metaverse that we're building is a better world than the one we live in and is amazing and inclusive and diverse, but also that we need to make sure that the world that we're living in is a better place for people, right? Which means making sure that we're engaging more politically, that we're being conscious about things like the environment and where things are at for people. Because when people say it can't be here, it's always a response to this dystopian reality. I'm kind of like, guys, what planet are you living on? Because right now we have fire, we have flood, we have, we've got economic crisis. We've never had a greater disparity between rich and poor. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, so actually this world's not a great place for a lot of people. And who am I to judge if escaping to alternate worlds or video games or whatever it is the right thing for people to do? That's not up to me, but I think it is up to all of us to make sure that the world that we're living in is a better place for people as well, and not to completely disengage from that, because it's too important to lose.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, also, Web3 is a tool, just like Web2 is a tool. The internet is a tool. And you can get lost in the internet and watch Netflix series and YouTube and get lost in that as much as you can in the metaverse. So it really, it depends how we use these tools. So we're kind of coming up to the end. So I'm going to ask, what's next for you, Lindsey?
Oh my God. So I've just finished my last week at AB InBev. It was an amazing 2 years inside a large corporate, my first time ever inside a large corporate. But it's time for me to get back to building. So I'm going to be announcing something in the next few weeks around that. And look forward to keeping everyone posted.
And how can people best stay in contact with you?
Twitter is my habit. I am the McInerney on Twitter, which is and then my last name, which is complicated. I probably should have changed that ages ago, but it's been with me too long now to. So it's McInerney, the McInerney. Twitter's the best place to get me.
Well, yeah, until the metaverse comes, of course. Great. Well, Lindsey, thank you very much. This was a very interesting interview. And thank you everybody for watching, and see you next time.